Hey everyone, Sky here to discuss Tremors, starring Kevin Bacon, Fred Ward, Finn Carter, Michael Gross, Reba McEntire, Victor Wong, Bobby Jacoby, Ariana Richards, Charlotte Stewart, and Tony Gennaro, and directed by Ron Underwood. Now, this is going to be my also newbie thing like I am with Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but I've never seen any of these movies before. Let's get straight into it. In the middle of the desert, Valentine McKee, played by Kevin Bacon, works on the fence, and Earl Bass, played by Fred Ward, is asleep as Valentine wakes Earl's ass up, which was rather funny, and they argue about who's making breakfast as the two are handymen fixing fences, toilet sewage, and the garbage. They finish fixing the desert fence and meet Rhonda LeBeck, played by Finn Carter, who's a geologist. And so far, these characters I really like, with an exception of one, which I'll talk about later, as Valentine is the most relatable because he's the protagonist. The character I don't really like is Melvin Plug, played by Bobby Jacoby, because he creates all sorts of problems, and I want him to die later in the movie, but I don't think he's gonna die at this point in the movie. But he pulls pranks at unnecessary times, and he just annoyed the hell out of me. There's something underground terrorizing the town and the desert, and we don't know what it is yet, but we will. Meanwhile, we get to know the characters as the audience likes them, and so do I. And they get an offer with free beer from Nancy, played by Charlotte Stewart, and with her daughter, Mindy, played by Ariana Richards, before she was ever in Jurassic Park. And she looks very young. She looked younger here than she did in Jurassic Park, in my opinion. Meanwhile, they find Edgar on the electric tower as he's dead, and we meet Dr. Jim and his wife Megan, who's building a house in the middle of nowhere, which honestly, the two characters are useless, and he says Edgar died of dehydration, and Edgar is another useless character because he does nothing except dies. One of the farmers, Fred, is killed by the underground monster, and Valentine and Earl warns the two construction workers who think they're pulling their leg, but they die anyways. And they get to the store with Walter Cheng, played by Victor Wong, owns as his phone is dead, and Valentine and Earl find a dead body with guts over the construction site, and they drive back to town and drag a tongue on the ground, which is disgusting. And we slowly get to know not just the characters, but the creatures underneath the ground. Dr. Jim and Megan have their air generator eaten by the underground creatures called the graboids, let's say, as they get killed by them, and the scene was very intense and got me to hold my grip on my seat. Now let me just explain why I called it graboids, because the movie calls them that by later in the film. So let's get back to it. Valentine, Earl, Bert Gummer, played by Michael Gross, and his wife Heather, played by Reba McEntire, go hunting for the underground, or should I say graboids, and don't find Dr. Jim and Megan because they died from the night before, and they find their car in the ground as they now realize they're dead, and the horses overreact because danger is upon them, and we see a graboid drinking the horse's blood and go after Valentine and Earl and go to the geologist's trap. As they learn, they get killed by giant rocks. And that's a good way to know these creatures, aka the graboids. And I'm actually really entertained by the material, and the movie makes sense as we now know what these creatures well enough, the graboids. We find out pretty early that Valentine has a thing for Rhonda as they wake up next to each other, and Rhonda has an idea to jump on the rocks to get away from the graboids. in the ground as well. And I like the sequence. It works very well as they drive away and find these graboids are huge, and the script is actually doing a very good job with slowly knowing the graboids, but the effects on them look animatronic to the point it looked kind of fake. But it was the 90s, I'll say. First, Melvin scares the townspeople and on purpose, and next thing you know, he screams, and the townspeople want to beat his ass up. And I don't blame them because he did annoy me right out the bat. But the graboids attack and kill, and everyone either gets inside the buildings or get on top of the buildings when the inside graboid attacks, and it is fun, and I am having a good time with the movie at this point while Bert and Heather go to the mountain and get a shitload of guns, which did work for part of their weaknesses, as well as big rocks, and later on some dynamite. And the trick to go by them is stepping quietly, is we find out after Bert and Heather kill one. There's 2 more to go, and which is convenient but still entertaining. Another character, Miguel, starts a tractor to distract the graboids as Valentine running towards it and stops, and he is surrounded by the graboids, and Rhonda thinks the distraction by kicking the water tower, and it goes there while Valentine gets another tractor to fit everybody in town, including Bert, Heather, with all the weapons as they fall down to the ground. The graboids make a trap before ever going to the mountains, and they throw dynamite at the graboids until they blow them one up. And there's 1 more to go, maybe 2, depending on what you think. And it chases them to the rocks, and the Tremors, or graboids, surround them, and they think of a plan to destroy the graboids. The last one, anyways, to death. They throw rocks and dynamite to the ground and as bait, and they do get him, but wait, there's 1 more to go, and doesn't take the bait and spits it out of the rocks as Valentine, Earl, and Rhonda are on the ground, and the rest of the townspeople make noises as it's not dumb. Valentine runs on the edge to blow the last graboid up on the edge and doesn't blow it up, but passes Valentine to get killed from the other side of the ground, which is a brilliant plan, by the way. And the town gets back to normal, and Rhonda takes a picture with the heroes, saving her life. And before she leaves, they make up, and as a climax, it was entertaining, and I really dig these characters. Now it's time for the rating. I'll give this movie a 7.4 out of 10. I really like the characters, and the director does a good job with making us relate to them as well as the graboids. The plot itself was very entertaining, as I had a fun time with the movie, and this is a classic protagonist story. So I'd like to thank you guys for joining me, and next week I will be back with Tremors 2 Aftershocks. And until next time, let's shoot them Bostons.